Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and now TikTok at Hawk Blogger. In fact, for the first time all morning, all forever, we've reached 1,000 followers on TikTok. It took us a little over a week to get there, but we're there. And we're streaming live on TikTok. So I've got some kind of contraption set up here with multiple cameras and going to do my best to talk to folks on Instagram, folks on Twitter, Facebook, over here on YouTube as well. So happy to see everybody who's just new over on TikTok following us. And I think I'm the only Seahawks fan who's excited about today. Seahawks play their final game. It is a stress-free game for the most part. They will face the Los Angeles Rams at 1:25 p.m. Pacific time today, and they will play a game that doesn't really mean much from a general perspective, but getting to 10 wins matters for a lot of different reasons. And I'll talk about some of the different milestones that some of the players can reach. We'll talk about some of the players who will be sitting for the Rams, some of the players who'll be playing, and give a little bit of the best effort preview for a game that's going to be a little hard to prognosticate because we don't really know exactly who the Rams are going to play. And quite honestly, I don't think we really know how Mike Macdonald's going to handle it for the Seahawks today as well. He's definitely said they're going to play to win. They're going to play their starters, but we don't know how long that will last. So we'll see how that plays out. I think most prognosticators, odds makers, fans are expecting a comfortable Seahawks win. I will say I'm not one of them. I think it could be closer than people want it to be. There haven't been a lot of comfortable Seahawks wins this year, and we'll just see how the Los Angeles Rams backups play. When they get a chance to get on the field, those guys usually have a lot to prove. And most importantly, the quarterback that's going to be coming in is not Stetson Bennett or some very inexperienced guy. It's Jimmy Garoppolo, who has played in a Super Bowl. He may not be a great quarterback, but he is certainly an NFL level quarterback. So I think this could be a little bit less comfortable than most Seahawks fans would like, but hopefully it's a comfortable win for the Seahawks. We will soon see. I also, if you haven't noticed, I changed around my office. So for folks on TikTok, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. This looks like the first time we've ever seen you. So what would we know any different? I've always had this as next to me, and decided last night I was going to switch things around to give you guys a little something different to look at. You can see some of my paraphernalia. I've got a bunch more, but a lot of good stuff there. And, we'll see if we change things around over time. And some of my favorite memories certainly are captured from some of those pieces. I'll always love the Baldwin Smacks, I should say, for folks that had the opportunity to purchase those back in the day. I would not eat those at this point, but it is an unopened box of Baldwin Smacks. So that was certainly a different era of Seahawks football. So before I get into previewing this Seahawks game, I wanted to talk specifically about Ernest Jones, because some of the news about Ernest Jones yesterday came out that the Seahawks have been talking with Ernest Jones about a contract extension, and that for now, the Seahawks have paused, and the agent for Ernest Jones have paused those conversations. And so what does that really mean? I mean, I'm going to go through and I will read you exactly what was said, so we know what Ian Rappaport reported. This came from Ian Rappaport of NFL Network. He says the Seahawks and standout linebacker Ernest Jones were engaged in contract extension talks. Okay, so they were engaged in talks, but they have amicably paused discussions per agents, Agent Turner and Butler. This is Ira Turner and his other agent, Ron Butler. So while the sides could pick it back up at any moment, and he would love to return, Jones appears to be set to hit the free agent market. So what did we hear in that announcement? Well, first of all, this seems to be coming from the agents, I would say, and the implication there is that while the Seahawks would love to sign Ernest Jones, they've decided that they'd like to sign Ernest Jones. The player and his agents have decided for now that they're going to test the market. And so what the implications there are that he will probably not sign prior, until we get closer to free agency. He didn't get the number he was looking for, or else they would have signed. There's probably a number that they believe they can get, or at least want to assess whether they can get by talking to other teams. And the way this generally works, the progression of things, is a lot of stuff happens at the combine. Agents are there, GMs are there. Agents talk to a variety of GMs. They get a feel for what the market is for certain players. GMs get that same feel. And at that point, you may have an opportunity to come back and say, all right, I think we can get this done. Or you get a pretty good idea of what you're going to pay. So that's the next kind of milestone in a negotiation like this. A couple things to know about this deal in general. One, there's a loud and I think logical contingent of Seahawks fans who get very frustrated that the Seahawks make these trades mid-season, trade away valuable draft capital, and then don't sign the player to an extension. And this happened, with Ernest Jones this year. They traded a 3rd-round pick. It happened with Leonard Williams last year. They traded a 2nd and a 5th. And Brady Henderson had a great thread on this. He and I have talked about this in the past, about some of the reasons why John Schneider has arrived at that philosophically. And I'll read you some of what Brady wrote here, and then we'll talk about that as well. He says, my understanding on the Ernest Jones was that the Seahawks were going to make an attempt to get a deal done around this time, but I'd guess that all involved probably figured the situation wouldn't be resolved until March, considering the timing and Seattle's MO with trade pickups. The Seahawks don't extend trade pickups right away. They don't sign them to contract extensions right away, as they want to make sure it's a good fit first. So they want to test that the person's going to fit in the locker room and on the field. They're also wary of the resentment that can come from a new guy who's just been acquired getting paid before others in the locker room who have been in line. This is a lesson learned from the Percy Harvin debacle. So I'll read a little bit more from Brady, but the implication there again is John Schneider is trying to be thoughtful to the locker room, be aware of what the signal that would be sent to the locker room if you trade for a player who hasn't stepped on the field and you immediately give him an extension, when there's guys that have been through training camp, maybe been here a few years, that have been battling. Geno Smith clearly wanted an extension before this season. Jaron Reed's in the last year of his deal. You could potentially argue that some of the rookies that are approaching the last year of their deal, although they don't not eligible for an extension until this coming off season. But there's been players, and there are players on the team who are going to potentially feel stepped on. Personally, I think that's a logical philosophy to have, but I also think that in this particular situation, it falls flat. Every single person in that locker room, every single person in that coaching staff, I think everybody knew within a week or two that Ernest Jones was the guy they wanted to have around. They would have been thrilled to hear that he was extended. And the Seahawks, for what it's worth, on defense especially, generally in a pretty good spot with, Jaron Reed's probably really the only guy that might be expecting an extension or wanting an extension. I don't know that anyone else would have really felt stepped on. Maybe DK Metcalf would be another guy that you could say on the offensive side. But for the most part, I think that the locker room would have been fine if they had decided to try to extend him earlier. The danger of waiting, the benefits of having potentially done that earlier would have been that there would have been some leverage, because what's Ernest Jones' biggest fear? What are his agents' biggest fear before free agency? It's injury. And so if you agree to an extension during when there's still a number of games left to play, then that gives Ernest Jones and his agents some peace of mind. So if you'd come to maybe if they'd offered the contract that they offered now 5 weeks ago, maybe Ernest Jones and his agents would have thought that that was a reasonable deal to do, because it would have mitigated some of the injury risk. Now, they didn't do that. So it doesn't really matter. It just didn't happen. And now we're in a situation where they weren't willing to offer quite what Ernest Jones and his agents think is a reasonable number. So they'll wait. And I don't think this means anything. I think Ernest Jones is going to be a Seahawk. So spoiler alert, I think Ernest Jones is going to be a Seahawk. I just think that it's going to be a little bit later to get that deal done. And the other piece that I'll just kind of throw out there is when you're talking about kind of figuring out what is Ernest Jones' market value. Well, let's look at a couple guys that were signed last year that were rumored for the Seahawks or connected to the Seahawks, right? You had Jordan Brooks, who was a Seahawk, who was expected to sign for 12, 13 million a year, was roughly what people are expecting, at least 10 to 13 million a year. And then there's Patrick Queen, who was Mike McDonald, Baltimore Raven player, was the jewel of the inside linebacker market. He was generally expected to sign for 17 million a year. Now, the top of the inside linebacker market is Roquan Smith, who's 28 years old. He makes 20 million a year. Fred Warner's right behind him at 19 million a year. And then there's Tremaine Edmonds at 18 million a year. Now, the reason that I bring these numbers up is that Patrick Queen was really expected to command 17 million. He was an all-pro last year, not a Pro Bowler. I mean, not just a Pro Bowler, an all-pro last year. He's young. He was 25 last year, same as Ernest Jones. He had numbers, gaudy numbers to go out there. And Patrick Queen didn't get 17 million. Patrick Queen got 13.5 million per year. Jordan Brooks did not get 10 to 13 million dollars. He got $8.75 million per year. And here's the thing. I think Jordan Brooks is a much closer comp to Ernest Jones than Patrick Queen from a production and a reputation standpoint. And let's take a look at that. So if we look at a kind of a comparison stats wise of these guys, I'll bring up Ernest Jones first, and then I will bring up Jordan Brooks, and then I will look at Patrick Queen, and we'll talk about what each of these guys had going into their free agent year. And here's Ernest Jones. So Ernest Jones this year, let's see if we can get a combined number here. So he has, hold on. He has 129 tackles. That's probably his biggest number. 129 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, no sacks. Okay. He has 1 interception. But 4 tackles for loss is not enough, not a lot, but 129 tackles. Jordan Brooks last year, he had 137 tackles, so more tackles. He had 11 tackles for loss. He had 3 sacks and 6 QB hits. So Jordan Brooks pretty much had better numbers across the board than Ernest Jones. Jordan Brooks was also a first-round pick, and believe it or not, pedigree matters for NFL markets. It just does. Whether or not it should, it does. Jordan Brooks was a first-round pick. Ernest Jones was not. For Patrick Queen last year, he had 133 tackles. He had 3.5 sacks. He had 9 tackles for loss. He had an interception. He had 6 passes defensed. So he had again, he was an all-pro. Ernest Jones never made the Pro Bowl, even though he's had some years that were very close to Pro Bowl years. His best year, he had 145 tackles, 4.5 sacks, 14 tackles for loss, 6 passes defensed. That was back in 2023. But this is not 2023. So his numbers in general, I don't think clear either Jordan Brooks, and they definitely don't clear Patrick Queen's. Both Jordan Brooks and Patrick Queen were first-round picks, back-to-back picks, I believe, back in their 2021 draft class. So what are the implications then of what that means for market? Well, on one hand, I think that the idea that Jordan Brooks is going to get $15 million a year, I think that's crazy. I just don't see it. I don't see it. If I look at the market for inside linebackers, here are the top paid inside linebackers. I've already told you through Tremaine Edmonds. After the 18 million, there's only 3 guys that are like 18 million above. That's Roquan Smith, Fred Warner, Tremaine Edmonds. Then it goes down to Matt Milano at 14 million a year. Then Queen at 13.6. Then Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, 12.5. We'll call him JOK for simplicity's sake. Azeez Al-Shaair, 11.3. Zaire Franklin of the Colts, 10.4. And then you get into Bobby Okereke, 10 million, Logan Wilson, 9, and then Jordan Brooks, 8.7. So when I look at those numbers and those players, I don't think Ernest Jones clears any of them from a production standpoint. He also doesn't have a Pro Bowl or an All-Pro. So I think the Seahawks are probably offering him, probably 8.5 to 9.5 million, somewhere in that range. Maybe they're trying to be even more frugal. Maybe it's 8 to 9 million. But I think he deserves roughly what Jordan Brooks got, is like a logical contract for Ernest Jones. From the Ernest Jones camp perspective, what would make sense for them is to actually talk about maybe doing, you traded a 4th-round pick for Ernest Jones. What's the value of that pick? Well, so this is where I talked to Jason Fitzgerald from Over the Cap, and one of the things that's important to kind of understand is that the 4th-round pick, if Ernest Jones signs elsewhere, in order to get a 4th-round pick as a compensatory 4th-round pick, so let me reset that again. The Seahawks traded a 4th-round pick for Ernest Jones to Tennessee. But if Ernest Jones signs with another team, the Seahawks are eligible to get a compensatory pick based off the contract value for what he signs. So the logic might be that they traded a 4th-round pick because they think they could get back a 4th-round pick. Now it would be a 2026, not a 2025, but that's really besides the point. So what value contract would Ernest Jones have to sign to be giving you back a 4th-round compensatory pick? Well, it's $13 to $17 million, somewhere in that range. So if he signs a contract that averages between $13 and $17 million a year, he would you'd be eligible to get a 4th-round compensatory pick. So that would be where Ernest Jones camp would come in, and they would say, we're younger than a lot of these guys. We've changed your defense overnight pretty much. You should pay us like one of the top inside linebackers in the game. That's between 13 and 17. That would basically be Patrick Queen level money. And so that's possible that they decide that that's their line. I'm not sure there's a team that's going to spend 13 to 17 million on an inside linebacker. It's a weak market. I don't think the Seahawks should pay that much money. I think the Seahawks have other places where they should go high, and it's not inside linebacker. I love Ernest Jones. I am 95% sure he will be back as a Seahawk in these situations. The coaches all want him back. The players, front office wants to, like, they traded a pick. They don't want to lose this guy. I think it's going to happen. Ultimately, what I think makes sense in these situations is for the team to get some protection. They will agree to a lower APY number. Let's say maybe they get to 9, maybe 9.5 as the APY number. And then they do escalators, incentives. And if he plays, if he makes the Pro Bowl, if they win a certain amount of games, if the defense performs at a certain level, you can do all these different escalators that could get it up to where it's a $13 million a year deal. So I think that's what we're going to see. Probably a deal where it's roughly 9 million APY, maybe 9.5, but that it can reach up to 12.5, 13 million. That would be my guess. And so, I think we're just going to have to ride this out. I see a lot of folks that are worried about this. Man, just pay the guy. We don't want to lose him. We've seen what this defense looks like without a good inside linebacker. I get it. But that's not how you run an NFL team. You do not put yourself over a barrel. Yes, Ernest Jones has been really good. No, you don't want to go back and find another one. Is Mike McDonald really good at finding linebackers? Sure seems that way. He's the one that picked Tyrese Knight, who looks like a good inside linebacker. It doesn't look like it's a good inside linebacker draft class. So on that front, not as great. But in any event, I don't think that they will. I think they'll find a way to get this done. I do not think that this is a situation where the Seahawks are going to pay $15 million a year. The market doesn't make sense to me to do it. And I don't think his numbers justify it. I don't think there's going to be another team that's going to come in and say, yep, we're going to pay you $15 million a year. So that's my prediction on what his contract will look like. See some questions from TikTok, and apologies. I have like multiple chats now going and multiple different cameras. So it's a little bit me getting used to managing all this. For people that don't know me on TikTok, I will just say, do a quick intro. My name is Brian Nemhauser. I have written a Seahawks blog since 2007 for 18 plus years. I also had a Seahawks podcast for a lot of that time, since about 2010, 2011. And I worked in the technology sector for 26 years, 24 of them at a company called Adobe. And then just this past year, decided to kick all that to the curb and have made covering the Seahawks my full-time gig. I am credentialed by the Seahawks. I've gone to every road game this season in the press box, decided it was not worth my money to fly down and pay for everything this weekend. So I'm able to cover it from home. And I am up here in Bellevue, Washington. So I go down to the VMAC to cover all the press conferences. I'll be there tomorrow for what will, I think, be the final closing press conferences, as well as the locker room, talk to some of the players before they pack up and head out. So appreciate all you folks coming from wherever you are. And thanks for following me here on TikTok. Appreciate all of you. And if you've given gifts through TikTok, I really appreciate it. It's going to be very hard for me to thank you individually as that happens. I have some stuff on YouTube to manage, but I'm doing my best. So really, really appreciate everyone sticking around. So as we kind of get back to this Ernest Jones thing, I think this will all square itself away. I wouldn't worry too much about it. Yes, it would be nice for it to already be done. I think it'd be great for him to go into this game knowing he's already signed. Everybody wants it to get done. It'll get done. So that's kind of the high level perspective I have on the Ernest Jones deal. So let's turn our attention to this game, to this Seahawks versus Rams game. And I think the part of it that is worth spending a little bit of time on is just talking about some of the milestones that can be hit. So before we even get into the matchups, which we will do, let's just talk about some of the milestones that can be hit. So the Seahawks could win 10 games. That is a milestone. Why does that matter? It doesn't matter that much, but the last time the Seahawks won 10 games was 2020. So it's been a little while since they won 10 plus games. They won 12 that year. That was the last time that they won the division. But they had been stuck at 9 wins the last couple years. Getting to 10 would be nice. Having a little bit, 3 games above 500, so to speak, or I guess 2 games, depending on how you look at it, would be meaningful. And Mike Macdonald would become the first head coach in Seahawks history to win 10 games in his first season. Going back and looking through, Pete Carroll won 7 games in his first season. Jim Mora won 5 games in his first season. Mike Holmgren won 9 games in his first season. Dennis Erickson, 8. Tom Flores, 2. Chuck Knox won 9. And Jack Patera won 2. So that would be something, to win the most games by a first-time Seahawks head coach in franchise history. So I think that matters. I think that's some value, and it is a clear improvement. And I'll say again what I've said before. People say, this is a meaningless game. You're playing against backups. Pete Carroll got 9 wins last year. They played Arizona in a similarly meaningless game, or pretty meaningless game. And the Arizona Cardinals missed 2 makeable field goals, a game they should have absolutely won. And so that was really an 8-win team, if you want to be that way. So in either way, I would say that Mike Macdonald is going to hopefully win at least a couple more than Pete Carroll. In this case, if he gets to 10, it will be officially 1 more win. If he only is at 9, I still think it is equivalent, but to 1 more win. But we'll see. We will see what happens in this game. Other milestones that are of note. So I think people have heard the most about Geno Smith's escalators. So just to cover those again, he needs, I think, 185 passing yards to earn a $2 million escalator. He needs to stay over 70% completion. Right now, he's 70.2 to maintain what would be a $2 million escalator. And he needs to get to 10 wins. If he gets to 10 wins, he gets another $2 million. So he's got $6 million in escalators available to him. That would increase his cap number for 2025, which would potentially increase the odds that the Seahawks are motivated to extend him to lower that cap hit. But that's kind of on the line for Geno Smith. The other pieces that I would say are worth knowing about: Jackson Smith-Njigba needs 5 catches to set the Seahawks record for receptions in a season, breaking Tyler Lockett's record of 100 receptions. He's at 96 right now. He also has 1,121 receiving yards. I don't know if I've seen this one, so I'm going to look this up to see. That's got to be up there for a rookie for the Seahawks. So let me find Seahawks seasons by a rookie, and we're going to sort by receiving yards, and we are going to say in their rookie, or in their, this isn't his rookie year. So I don't know why I'm looking up rookie years. Let's see within the first 2 years of a player's career. Within the first 2 years of a player's career, what is the most receiving yards? And I'm guessing it's going to be DK Metcalf. But let me change it to just the Seahawks. Sorry. Team Seahawks. And we'll look here, and yes, DK Metcalf has the record among the first 2 seasons. He had 1,300 yards. So that would take a big game. It's not totally out of the realm. 1,300. Jackson Smith-Njigba has had a 180-yard game in the season this year. He would need 183 to match DK Metcalf's record for most receiving yards in the first 2 years. That might actually, I think, be the most receiving yards by a Seahawk in Seahawks history. Corin Robinson has the second most with 1,240. That's a little bit closer to getting. That would require, 130 yards or so for JSN to clear Corin Robinson on that list. I predicted 1,190 receiving yards for JSN, so I want him to get around 70 so that I'm right. Speaking of DK Metcalf has 939 yards receiving, so he needs about 61 yards. Not roughly, he needs exactly 61 yards to get 1,000 yards receiving. And from there, some other milestones, I would say. Zach Charbonnet playing in this game. He has 510 yards rushing. He needs 64 yards rushing to be the leading rusher on the team this year. Kenneth Walker is still the leading rusher with 573 yards on the season. Zach Charbonnet has 510, so that's a chance. There is an interesting milestone here for Zach Charbonnet. He needs one touchdown, either receiving or rushing, to get to 10 touchdowns on the season. Did you know that Zach Charbonnet has 9 touchdowns this season? Did you know that he just needs 2 rushing touchdowns to have 10 rushing touchdowns on the season? Let's find out the last time the Seahawks had a player with 10 rushing touchdowns. That would be interesting. Let's remove the first or second year filter. And let's just look at rushing touchdowns greater than or equal to 10. And when's the last time a Seahawk had 10 rushing touchdowns in a season? It was Marshawn Lynch in 2014. So the Seahawks have not had a running back or anybody with 10 plus double digits rushing touchdowns since 2014. Zach Charbonnet needs 2 in this game to be the first to do it since then. I will say, based off of this, he may become the first to do it within the first 2 years of a career with the Seahawks. Let me check that. So Sean Alexander in 2001 had 14 rushing touchdowns. That was the last time a player in his first 2 years had double-digit rushing touchdowns. So that's a pretty cool milestone for Zach Charbonnet that seems within reach. He's had 2 rushing touchdowns a couple of times this year. Let me double-check that. He has had 2 rushing touchdowns against Miami and against Arizona. And he's had at least 1 in 3 of the last 5 games. So that one seems in reach for Zach Charbonnet. What else do we have? Let's look around. We have AJ Barner. Nothing particularly interesting. He's sitting at 211 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns. Kenny McIntosh, nothing particularly interesting there. Might be nice for him to get his first touchdown as a pro. What a rough year for Jake Bobo. 12 catches for 103 yards, no touchdowns. Really a down year for him. So offensively, I think that covers a lot of the milestones. Defensively, Leonard Williams is 1 sack away from getting to 10 sacks. He is 2 sacks away from, 2.5 sacks, from tying his career high. He had 11.5 sacks in 2020. If he gets 2.5 sacks, he will tie that mark, which could go a long way towards helping him get that all-pro vote that he didn't get for the Pro Bowl, which would be nice to see. So that's a big one for him. He is 4 quarterback hits away from hitting 30 quarterback hits, which would also be a pretty cool number. I'm trying to see if that would also tie a career high. So 4 quarterback hits would help him tie a career high in that. Derek Hall, sitting there at 8 sacks. He is 2 sacks away from getting to double digits. He had 0 sacks last year. So Derek Hall, if he can get in there, get a couple sacks, that would be great. Boye Mafe is 2 tackles for loss away from 10 on the season. By the way, Derek Hall is also 1 quarterback hit away from 20 on the year, which would be great to see. Otherwise, like Boye Mafe he's 3 sacks away from tying his mark from his second year of 9. He has 6 sacks. I don't necessarily expect that to happen. Couple other guys here there's a couple tackle numbers that are probably worth talking about. Devin Witherspoon. Devin Witherspoon is 10 tackles away from 100 tackles on the season. He's already set his career high with 90, but 10 more tackles would give him 100 on the year. Ernest Jones needs 15 tackles to get to 100 with the Seahawks. He's already cleared that combined with the Titans. I think those are probably the major defensive milestones. We can look at passes defensed. I don't know if there's anything particularly interesting there. Julian Love needs 1 to get to 10. Devin Witherspoon needs 3 to get to 10. Josh Jobe will not play in this game, so that does not matter. But yeah, those are probably the major milestones in this game to kind of be aware of. Let me get to some super chats here before we get into some of the matchups. I want to thank Rick R., who has donated 5 Hawk Blogger memberships over here on YouTube. Really appreciate it, Rick. And folks, if you get one of these free memberships from Rick, consider giving one. And if you're not following me on YouTube, make sure you subscribe and like there. Great place to get access to all the content that we produce every single day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. People say they do a daily podcast, but then they don't do it on the weekends. That's not daily. That's 5 days a week, 7 days a week, even when I'm getting over being sick. It doesn't matter. I do this show, and we'll be doing it all off season. Draft prep. I'm going to head to the Senior Bowl. I will bring you guys with me. We will do some scouting on offensive linemen, on linebackers, on quarterback. Jackson Dart will be there. I'm excited to see Dylan Gabriel will be there. A number of the quarterbacks will be there, so I will take a look at them. So yeah, make sure you like, subscribe, follow wherever you are. And appreciate that. And then we've got Old School Seahawk has done a super chat here. He says, always looks forward to Seahawks football. I'm excited for today. What are your thoughts on the Vikings ticket purchase for the Lions game? Grateful for you and the Hawk Blogger community. Well, grateful for you as well, Old School. So for people that didn't hear about this, the Vikings spent about $2 million buying like a couple thousand seats behind the Vikings bench for this big Sunday night football game, but against the Lions on the road. And they then turned around and sold those seats at face value to season ticket holders. Such a cool move. Such a cool move. And in a season when the Seahawks have had such a besmirched reputation on their home field, I think it's just a really cool idea by the ownership to do that. I have seen already stories of Vikings season ticket holders reselling these tickets that they got for over face value. Yuck, gross. I mean, now I know, I got to be careful because everybody's in different financial situations and potentially there's folks that need the money. And so if it's that kind of situation, I get it. But I sure hope they're selling it to Vikings fans, at least, and I just know a lot of people that have a lot of money that have season tickets because it costs a lot of money to have season tickets and they don't need the money, but they like money. And so they're like, oh, this is a great deal. Why wouldn't I sell these and get 2 or 3 times the price I paid? And that's gross. That's the thing I'm reacting to because I know there's definitely some of those people in that mix. So, I just think it's cool. It's going to be a great game tonight, and it has significance for the Seahawks. If you didn't know this, the Seahawks schedule is almost finalized. So yesterday, when the Baltimore Ravens won, they helped to finalize the 16th out of 17 Seahawks opponents. So the Ravens won. That means they're first place in that division. That means the Steelers will be a road opponent for the Seahawks next year. It was going to be either Baltimore or Pittsburgh. Thankfully for the Seahawks, one of the benefits of not getting into the playoffs is they get the second place schedule instead of the first. It's the Rams that will have to travel to face the Ravens, and the Seahawks will travel to face the Steelers. And quite honestly, that's a more winnable game for sure. This game tonight between Detroit and Minnesota will decide who travels to Seattle next year. The loser of that game will come to Seattle. So we could get Detroit again, but this time in Seattle. Could get Minnesota, what will be the second year in a row, having to travel to Seattle. So that is the final game for the Seahawks schedule that will be decided tonight. So I don't know. I'm curious what you all think, who you would rather the Seahawks play. Either one to me, but I'm going to be cheering tonight for the Lions. They deserve for my money, they deserve the division. I really hope they win the Super Bowl. That's the team I'm pulling for. My ideal Super Bowl would be I just said something bad. Would be Lions versus Bills is what I meant to say. Two franchises that have not had that experience, and I'd love to see that. So that's where we are with the Seahawks schedule. Let's get back to kind of previewing this game. So who is going to be sitting for the Rams? So let's pull up who will be sitting for the Rams. And let me bring up Jordan Rodriguez, I think is her. Do I have the right one? I'll try to get the right reporter because I really like her coverage. For The Athletic. And where is she? So we'll talk about who's sitting. So the people sitting for the Rams, Matthew Stafford, the quarterbacks, we already know that Jimmy Garoppolo will play. Cooper Kupp will not play. Puka Nacua will not play. Kyron Williams will not play. Alaric Jackson, their left tackle, and Kevin Dotson, their guard, will not play. Rob Havenstein was already ruled out with an injury. So that is a significant chunk of the Rams. And as of right now, I will tell you what the odds are saying. I believe the odds started with the Rams as 2.5 points favorites. Last I saw, the Seahawks were up to 7-point favorites. In some places, they're 7.5-point favorites in this game. That makes me a little uncomfortable. I gotta tell you. I'm not sure I see it being that easy for the Seahawks. I do believe the Seahawks are a better team than the Rams, and if the Seahawks were playing the Rams full strength and this game mattered, I would be picking the Seahawks to win this game. So it's not that I think the Rams are a better team. I do believe that when you have backups playing, their motivation is pretty strong. And you've got the Seahawks playing their starters, who it's going to be hard to really be at their sharpest. You know, they know this game doesn't matter in general. They're playing for maybe financial incentives or statistical incentives. It's kind of like a preseason-ish feel. They are going to be protecting themselves from injury, you know, knowing that they want to make sure they're safe. You just got one team that might be playing a little bit harder than the other team, even though the Seahawks are more talented with who's going to be playing. You could have some issues there. So what's that going to mean from a who plays perspective? Well, this is going to mean Tutu Atwell and Jordan Whittington are likely going to get a lot of snaps for the Rams. And he's been a very good player for them this year. Both Tutu Atwell and Jordan Whittington have been good players for the Rams this year. They've both hurt the Seahawks at times. So Jordan Whittington, a good rookie, and then Tutu Atwell had a reasonably good game, has had good games against the Seahawks. So I don't think they lose a ton. Obviously, Puka Nacua is one of the best receivers in the game, but will not be playing. A third receiver we could see is Xavier Smith. I do not know much about. So he's another guy that we could see. I think most likely we're going to see a lot of Demarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson, who are other receivers. Demarcus Robinson is the guy, sadly to say, who caught the game-winning touchdown against Reek Woolen in the last matchup. So you'll see Demarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, Jordan Whittington. Those are three capable receivers. And they will have a capable quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo throwing to them. So I think that's not crazy. They will likely have Bo Limmer, their center, playing. Steve Avila, their second-year guard, will play. They will probably have Jonah Jackson, I would assume, at one of the guards, which was one of their big free agent signings, and a guy that played for the Lions and was a Pro Bowler for the Lions for years. Justin Dedich is another guy that can play. Joe Notaboom will be their right tackle. He struggled quite a bit last time, but I think left tackle is the one I'm kind of curious about. I'm trying to see with Alaric Jackson if there's a game that he missed this year. He missed the first 2 weeks. So let me go back and look and see who they played at left tackle in week 1 and week 2. The Rams offense, left tackle, Warren McClendon. So that's probably who they're going to play at left tackle in this game. And, you know, he's not great. So there could be a good opportunity to get sacks. I think that's a reasonable thing to hope for in this game. As far as running back, Blake Corum will play for the Rams in this game. He is one of the rookies from Michigan. Obviously, Mike McDonald knows him well. He is a tough runner. And so I think that they have a reasonable approximation of an offense to put on the field in this game against the Seahawks. On defense, don't have as much information about who's going to play and who's not. What I've heard is that they are going to play their starters and then they're going to start subbing people out. So I think we will see for at least the first few series the best that they have to offer on defense. And then we'll see guys kind of sub in. We'll probably get a look at Brennan Jackson. If you're a Cougar fan, Brennan Jackson, I think he is still healthy and available. The edge rusher will probably come in for Jared Verse. We'll probably see a lot of Michael Hoyt, who is someone who comes in as well as a pass rusher, plays a bunch of different positions. We may see some of the backups on the interior. So we'll see what goes on there. I think we'll from a cornerback perspective, they don't have a bunch of depth in the secondary. They do have Emmanuel Forbes, who they signed, who's a former first-round pick of the Commanders. Be interested to see if Forbes gets some run in this game. But keep in mind that this Rams team is pretty flawed defensively. Now, they have a good pass rush with, obviously, Jared Verse and with Braden Fisk and with Kobe Turner and Byron Young. All those guys gave the Seahawks a fair amount of trouble the last time they played. But this is a team that struggles offensively. They've actually averaged fewer points per game than the Seahawks, fewer yards per game than the Seahawks. And we all know how frustrated we've been with the Seahawks offense. And that's the Rams starters. So we'll see how that goes. Defensively, the Rams are 27th in the NFL in yards allowed per game. They're 25th in the NFL in yards per play allowed. So, that's not great. One of the things that's really helped the Rams avoid being a terrible, dumpster fire on defense is that they're 5th in the NFL in red zone defense, which is highly variable. And luckily they're facing a very bad red zone offense that is just as likely to turn the ball over as they are to score a touchdown, unfortunately for the Seahawks. But that's a thing that the Rams have been able to kind of been fortunate to have with them. This is one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL. They are 24th in rushing yards allowed per game. They are 23rd in yards per rush allowed. Passing is not much better. They're 25th in yards per attempt allowed. They're 20th in sack rate. So even though they have some good pass rushers, they have not created quite as much sacks as you'd think. And one of the things that's really worked well for them is they haven't turned the ball over. So Matt Stafford has not had a good year. It's been really like a year where I wonder if he has much left in him. But he's thrown a lot fewer touchdowns, but he's thrown a career low in interceptions. Jimmy Garoppolo, one thing he does is he turns the ball over. Matt Stafford should have about 6 or 7 more interceptions than he does. Somehow he has some of the best luck when it comes to people dropping his interceptions. That won't be a factor here because he won't be playing, but we'll see how that goes. Another thing to know about this game, the Rams are number 1 in the NFL in fewest penalties per game. And so the Seahawks are one of the most penalized teams in the game in the NFL. So we'll see if that rears its head as well. I'm going to do a quick check on EPA because I like to look at that and see where things are. Now, granted, these are all going to be off because the Rams aren't playing their normal players, but the Rams are 13th in EPA per play on offense. They are 8th in success rate. They are 15th in rush EPA. So it's interesting. They've been much more efficient than the Seahawks, but they have not been much more. The results have not been great. Defensively, the Rams are still 22nd in the NFL in EPA per play. They are 23rd in the NFL in success rate. When you look at rush, it's 19. When you look at passing, 26th. So again, this has been a pretty flawed Rams team. The fact that the Seahawks have gifted them the NFC West is unfortunate, but the Rams also get credit for beating the Bills and beating the Vikings. Those 2 wins, are the difference, as well as the Seahawks really blowing some games against the Giants and against some other teams. So that's kind of a look around this matchup. I'll say there's some other games. I think this game coming up, the 10 a.m. slot's going to be fun. I think the NFC South is not totally decided. Tampa Bay will be playing at the same time as the Atlanta Falcons. I, for one, am going to get off this stream and I'm going to go watch the Falcons play. I may do a live stream watch party during the Seahawks game. If folks are interested, let me know. But yeah, please, if you haven't already, give the show a like, click subscribe, click follow if you're on TikTok. Would love to have the audience and the community continue to grow there. And head on over to jkboots.com. You can't quite see it in this view. Let me give you another view and you'll get a better look at them. Well, you can kind of see them there. I'll just grab them. You could get a pair of these bad boys. Plus, if you use code HawkBlogger, you get 10% off at jkboots.com. And these are going to be one of a kind. You are going to get a pair of these handmade just for your feet. Only one person will get them. And I'm going to pick who that is after the season ends. So you got to use code HawkBlogger. You got to go to jkboots.com. Buy yourself the best pair of boots you're ever going to own. These are Washington-based company, family-owned, just a fantastic pair of boots. I love my JK boots. If you're a construction worker, a police officer, a firefighter, you're on your feet a lot of the day or whatever, they're great. If you just want to wear them with jeans, they're great. And they feel like they've been handmade. And the smell, I mean, amazing. They're amazing. It's an amazing product. I'm really happy to partner with JK Boots. And not only that, but we have given away 3 pairs of boots to the Wildland Firefighters Foundation. So Northwest firefighters, forest firefighters, have their feet protected while they are protecting our Northwest forests. It's a great deal. Go over there, get the best boots you're going to ever own, and help keep our forests safe. So that will do it here for this edition of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Thanks to everybody who joined on TikTok Live for the first time. Really appreciate all of you, and appreciate everybody here over on YouTube. We do have another super chat, so let me get to that from El Nino. He says, Cross, Tomlinson, Olu, Lamea, and Jarrell are the starters today. Yeah, good point there. I forgot to mention on the Seahawks side of things that we will not have Abe Lucas start. He's out for this game. We'll probably not have Byron Murphy play, which is a real shame. I was hoping that he would get a chance to get his first full sack of the season. He's been battling a back issue. He's questionable. I would guess that they're just going to protect him, but we'll see. Would have loved to see him in this game. And we'll see. Like Mike Jarrell, learn a little bit about him, see what he has to offer. Stone Forsythe will be available as a backup if they want to go in that direction. All right, everybody. Appreciate all of you. I will see you all soon. Until then, I'm Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on all the places at Hawk Blogger. This has been another edition of Hawk Blogger Mornings. Take care, y'all.